and welcome to the Leadership Table, where conversations inspire, lead, and elevate. I'm your host, Jason E. Brooks, bringing you insights from top leaders shaping industries through leadership, culture, and success. For today, we are diving into the critical role of inventory management in hospitality and how it impacts efficiency, profitability, and overall business success. Joining us is our distinguished guest, Angelo Esposito. Now, Angelo is the co-founder and CEO of WISK.ai, that's WISK.ai, an innovative inventory management platform designed specifically for the hospitality sector. With over a decade of experience in the industry, Angelo understands firsthand the challenges faced by bar and restaurant owners. His vision with WISK.ai is to streamline operations, improve margins, and minimize waste, helping businesses run smoother and more efficiently. Before we dive in, be sure to subscribe and share this episode with a fellow leader who could benefit from today's conversation. Now, Angela, welcome to the Leadership Table. Let's start with your journey. What inspired you to create WISK.ai, and what challenges in hospitality were you aiming to solve?
Great questions. First of all, thank you for having me on the show, Jason. It's fun to be here. It's nice to be on the receiving end. So it's really cool. Funny enough, it's not some grand, crazy story. It really was just a problem, being an entrepreneur, just a problem that I wanted to solve. So when it happened, this was just over 10 years ago. I was actually working on another project at the time, and I noticed somebody in a nightclub counting the bar inventory specifically. And so I got intrigued, and I was like, "Oh, what are you doing?" "I'm doing inventory." And he was looking at every bottle. He was kind of estimating. So he was like, "Oh, this is a 0.8, yeah, 0.7. And I'm like, "How do you know it's a 0.7? You get used to, okay, interesting." He had his clipboard and paper, writing it all down. And so I was like, okay, maybe, how often do you do this? Now, they were a nightclub, so they were doing it like nightly. I soon realized most places do it weekly. If it's food, maybe monthly. But anyways, the point was, I saw them doing it. So I'm like, okay, if they're doing it nightly, it's got to be important. But maybe they're like the exception. They're a nightclub. Let me go speak to some friends in the industry. And so I went to hotels. I went to high-end restaurants. I went to casual dining. I wanted to get a sense. And what I found was almost everyone was basically using pen and paper or some form of a spreadsheet, whether it was Excel or something else. And so I thought to myself, and I asked them, like, why aren't you using software? And the lesson was, the few software solutions at that time, there wasn't many, but maybe the tech wasn't ready back then, but they were so cumbersome to use that even the few restaurants that tried them ended up saying, F it, let me just go back to my old school way of doing it. And so I found this interesting niche where I said, I wonder if I can create something simple enough that someone would actually stick to the software. So when we started, I'll joke around because it was like fast forward 10 years and now it's a company. But when I started, it was just like a project. I'm like, I wonder if I can help my friends in the industry have an inventory, or at that time, bar inventory solution that's easy enough that they would stick to it and not go back to pen and paper. And that's where it started. It obviously has evolved like crazy since there, but that was the origin story.
There's several stories, several years, several brands that I've worked for and with that bar inventory is just some kind of gray area, and it shouldn't. We use scales to weigh meat all day long.
Yeah.
All day long, we put items on scales in order to get the right measurements for inventory. But with profit margins on lift being so high, my 0.7 is not your 0.7.
Exactly.
My 0.3 is not the next person who works after me 0.3. The variations that can happen within a 7-day period and or 30-day period are so drastic that it cannot be left to how good do you feel your 0.3 is versus my 0.3. That's not a good thing. So no, you hit it spot on. Now it is very important But why would you say is proper inventory management such a game changer for restaurants and bars?
Yeah. I mean, so I'm going to answer that. But I also want to say it's not only the point 0.3 is 0.3, which absolutely just human error. My 0.7 is 0.8, and then there's fake variances. But I always tell people there's a lot of products that are opaque. I'm like, that Class Azul bottle that you can't see through, and that bottle of Hendrick's gin, and that Malibu rum that's white, you
I
can't see
thought
through.
you just shake it and then you listen to it and then you can get the verbal points.
That's basically what happens. I remember the first time I saw someone do that, I was laughing. I'll never forget it. I have this vivid memory. Took one Hendrix that was full, took the open one in the other hand, and he went like this. It's about a 0.4. And I just started laughing. I was like, he was so confident too. And I was like, this is crazy. Like, we can't be doing this thing. But to answer your question, it's a good question. It's the reason it's such a big issue, because if you think about it logically, when you have a restaurant or a bar, your biggest expense, hence the name, is your prime costs. And your prime costs are really made of two things: your labor costs and your cost of goods sold. Labor costs, as you know, is your staff, basically, give or take, your employees, your team, your everything related to, running the operation. And your cost of goods, as you can imagine, is all the stuff you buy to sell, aka the food, the beverage, to make the final ingredient or the final menu item or cocktail or whatever it is, and sell. And that typically can account for about 60%, right? So what that means is, like, keep the math simple. If you're doing $1 million in revenue, it's very realistic to say about 600,000. Can it be 500? Sure. Can it be 550? So 50 to 60%. But we'll go to labor and cost of goods sold. So cost of goods sold on its own could easily be like 30%, right? And then the other 30 is labor. Someone might be listening and say, no, my labor is 25. Yeah, there's a range, but on average, let's say 20 to 30%, give or take. So when your cost of goods sold is such a big chunk of your business, right? A business doing $1 million in revenue, there's a good chance about $300,000 is cost of goods sold. If you're not managing that, what are you managing? So I always joke around that I tell people there's a lot to do in a restaurant, don't get me wrong. But if I were to focus on a few areas, and, leadership's important, as you know, and there's a lot of areas, training your staff and Spark. But in terms of the operational side, a big piece of that pie is managing your cost of goods sold. And a big part of that is having accurate inventory. So that's why I think the inventory aspect is so important. And people sometimes dismiss it. But once you just look at it from a numerical standpoint or from like a P&L standpoint, I think you start to realize, wait, I probably shouldn't ignore this inventory thing because it's, 30% of my business, give or take.
You are spot on. I always say everyone's role within our industry and any industry, whenever they say my title is XYZ, whenever they then give that job description of what that title is, it is get results and pour great drinks. Get results and make great saute dishes. Get results and prep to the par that is given to me to make sure I don't over prep or under prep, or get results and lead this business to the next level. But the first thing our role is get results. So proper weight, proper inventory up, and understanding that whether it's 20% or 30%, whatever your cost of goods are, getting results is the very first thing. Why? Because we have to pay the bills. We don't do this as a nonprofit. Even nonprofits have to put the business in first to make sure they can still turn on the lights the next day to help out whomever that they are helping. But it's get results and manage your business first in order to provide opportunity for others tomorrow. So it's spot on. Now, even though we are getting results, the true communication aspect in the hospitality industry, whether hotels, bars, or restaurants, how we communicate is something that helps us to be more successful or have more struggles. How does strong communication between teams impact inventory control and reduce waste?
Great question. It's funny because communication is a big part of it. And that, I'll give you a perfect example. A leader who comes in and is like, I don't trust my staff, so I want to implement an inventory system and catch losses. You're going to get resistance, right? It's not the best the best look. And it's also like, there's going to be resistance from the team and they're like, oh, they don't trust me.
That's not motivating. Yes,
Not
that's not
motivating,
motivating.
right?
No.
But if you communicate to your team, guys, and I'll give you a beverage and food example. Beverage examples, guys, listen, there's about 20% losses from overpouring, spillage, theft. I want to try to reduce that, because if we can run a more successful business, we can do more creative things, we can try some specialty cocktails, we can have some theme nights, whatever it is. But you kind of inspire them to say, hey, I want the business to run so you guys can do things you want to do, get tools you want to get bonuses. But it's like, this is to help you, because if this is not working, the business is not working, we're all out of a job. So it's like framing it in a sense of like, this is to help you. And on the food side, sometimes chefs might push back, whatever. But the idea there is like, I get it. You want to make these beautiful dishes and it's a bit of an art, and that's great. But the flip side of that is like, hey, there's about 30% food waste, right? So on the food side, because it's perishable items, the industry average, at least in North America, is 30% goes to waste. And the big culprit of that is just over ordering, not prepping the right amounts. And so that's a lot of waste, right? 1/3 of your food is going in the garbage. And so if you can communicate that to your team, like, guys, I'm not here to nickel and dime, right? Like, and that's how I coach my guys. I'm like, guys, the point of whisk isn't Jason overpoured half an ounce of tequila. It's good. It's part of the industry. You're a regular. I give you a little something extra. It's part of the magic. We're not a control system with spouts that you got to track every half an hour. It's not that. But at the end of the day, if you don't know if you're making money, that's not good. And I find that restaurants sometimes are only focused on the revenue number, but if they don't know their cost of goods, they don't really know their profit. So they're like, any restaurant is good at telling you their sales. Like, I'll sit down with someone. Yeah, we sold about 20,000 last week. Yeah, we did about 10 grand in cocktails yesterday. We did 5 grand in food. They'll tell you right away. If I say, okay, but how much of that did you make? Yeah, I'm not sure. How much was the beef and the buns and the tomatoes and the lettuce in that burger? How much was, that's where it's like, it falls apart. So all this to say, a big part of the communicating with the team is putting them on the same page and telling them it's not about nickeling and diming. It's about just running a profitable business so you can grow as a team. And the analogy sometimes I give is like, obviously the leader or the owner or whoever's there trusts you, because there's probably staff members who have keys to the place. There's probably staff members who know the alarm code and open it and close it and count the register. So it's not about nickeling and diming, because if not, they wouldn't. And it's not about trust. If not, they wouldn't trust you with the keys. So it's really about, how do we run a more profitable business so everybody wins?
I mean, you are absolutely right. One of the 5 keys that I teach, the very first key of my model, which is an acronym, because you know how in our industry we all love acronyms.
Yes,
but
sir.
master your KPIs. You have to know your numbers inside and out, not as an accountant, but you have to know your numbers and what is the human element that makes that number move left or it moves right. But you have to master your KPIs, not just know sales, but
Yes.
know the actual profit margins, what's going on, what caused that, things like that. So now, even in what I do coaching, I do consulting, I do professional speaking, I'm an author, and we can probably at any conference throw a stick and hit 10 of us within a 10-foot radius. But what makes WISK AI different from traditional inventory tracking, and how does it integrate into restaurant operations?
Good question. Very good question. It's such a great question, because one of the things that, like, it's hard to communicate until you see it. And the reason I say that, and then I'm going to communicate it now, but the reason I say that is because on paper, a lot of WISK competitors sound the same, because we need the same things to calculate, meaning like, it's not magic. I need an inventory. I need your invoices. I need your recipes. I need your sales. Whether it's me or 10 other competitors, there's certain things you need. It's like, to calculate usage, I need that. To calculate the sales, I need the recipe. Like, there's kind of the baseline. So the question becomes, how does WISK get those things versus someone else? And I think that's where we do well. A good, data point for us is our demo to close rate is like really high. So when people see it, they're like, wow, this is great. And we close a lot. Our biggest challenge is getting people into the demo, because to your point, there's 20 other people that do this. So I always encourage people, try to figure out what are your main pain points and book a few different demos, because unfortunately, That's the biggest difference right now. If someone was looking at Whisk or someone else, it would be in the details. So let me give some examples. I'll do beverage, I'll do food. On the beverage side, someone might say, oh, no, my POS does inventory, or I found this other system, it does inventory. And then we'll sit down and we'll say, okay, but you have a beverage program and you have a good amount of liquor and wine. So how are you counting that? Oh, I just input it into my POS, or I'm using this basic system, which is like a glorified spreadsheet. And then we start explaining to them, okay, did you know Whisk has a mobile app? Did you know we have 200,000 bottles in our database with the barcodes, the images, and the weights? Did you know you could split up the work? So if you're 10 people counting, everything's syncing in real time. Did you know that we have a Bluetooth scale integration? So when you place that open bottle of Jack Daniels on the scale, it tells you exactly how many ounces. Did you know that our app works offline? So when you're in that wine cellar or basement and there's no Wi-Fi, you can continue counting. And then they're like, their eyes are like, wow, wow. And then they're like, so now it's hard to get, but on paper, it's like Whisk count and competitor X count. So they both do inventory. So again, the secret is the how. So what we like to think about is Whisk for all of those hows, at least today, tech is always evolving, but I think we do them really well. One of the best, if not the best. So on the inventory side, 200,000 bottles, works offline, real-time sync, et cetera, Bluetooth scale. On the invoicing side, snapping a picture, we use a combination of AI and then real Whisk human review. So really they could snap a picture, they can upload it, they can forward it via email, we ingest it. There's systems, some systems do that, some systems you have to enter manually, et cetera. But again, you start going through the granular of how Whisk is different. I'll be sitting with the client. I'll just give you one quick one. Let's talk food. They'll be like, yeah, my food system's okay, but I got 10 versions of tomatoes now, because sometimes I buy supplier A or supplier B, and in my software it just adds it as a new one. Whisk can do that, but we also have the concept of an item variation. So if you receive tomatoes in different formats or from different suppliers with different costs, at the recipe level in your hamburger, it's still a master tomato, and there's tomato variations. And so you don't have to update your recipe all the time. That's just one tiny example, but all these things start adding up, because now they're looking at Whisk and they're like, okay, wait, inventory is a mobile app, scanning. Oh, wait, they got a database. The food side is just snapping invoices. Oh, wait, item variations. That's good. My older system, I used to have 20 duplicate. So as all these points add up, that's what makes Whisk different. And so the answer here, I know it's a long answer, but the answer is it's a sum of all these things that add up in terms of the likelihood that they're going to keep the team will keep doing what they need to do, because sometimes they lose confidence or they lose faith, and that they're going to get the numbers that they want to get out of a system. So our philosophy is like, listen, we know these are the KPIs you want. To get those KPIs, whether you use Whisk or anyone else, you need these inputs. So our philosophy is for all these inputs, we try to make it as easy as possible. And on the integration side, we integrate with 60 point of sales. Think Post, Clover, Lightspeed, Square, GoTab, SmartTab, you name it, like Cluster. So we integrate with a ton of POS systems. All this is on our website. We have EDI integrations with some suppliers. Think Cisco, GFS, US Foods. But even if we don't, you just snap a picture. And then we integrate with some accounting systems like QuickBooks. So the idea is we want to fit into their ecosystem. So if someone's using Toast POS as an example, they might not be getting enough out of their inventory system, which is normal. It's not a knock on Toast or any POS. It's a POS has a lot to do. It's hard for them to do what an inventory system does. And there's a reason Whisk and our competitors integrate with these POS systems. The POSs wouldn't let us integrate if they're like, we do this perfectly. Generally, they have very basic inventory. The minute a restaurant or bar needs something more robust and invoices and recipes, they look for something like us. So that's generally how we kind of fit into their ecosystem. We like to think of it like this. They start off with their POS. You open your restaurant, POS, and usually a couple months in, they're like, all right, the most important thing is the team and just serving guests and collecting money. And usually a couple months in, they're like, am I even making money? And that's where they start looking at them like this.
I'll tell you what, I must have been around the block a lot. I think I've worked with every single one of those POS systems, with every single one of those distribution companies, almost every single one you said, I've had experience with. So that's telling how much I've been around the block. But there are a few things that stuck out to me. I remember so vividly, and I'm sure everyone listening and or watching does too, the early mornings and the late night of doing inventory every single week as a restaurant or as a high volume bar every single night. It is time consuming. And what sucks about that
Yes.
time consumption is, as a hospitality industry, restaurant, food and bev industry, we will continue to get more things that we have to do. As more data comes in, as more things come in, there are more things for us to do with dang social media, with marketing, not to knock marketing, with
Yeah.
operations, with all of that. It's just a increase. So can you share how WISK AI helps hospitality businesses save time and increase their bottom line at the same time?
Yeah. Um, Honestly, our slogan, funny enough, is literally time back, passion forward. And so at a high level, internally at WISK, we always think about, it's not about the feature, it's we think about, is this going to save them time? Is this going to make their lives easier? Because we know most, if not all, hospitality professionals go to the industry for different reasons, but it's generally for their love of hospitality. That can mean love of guests, love of interaction, their love of food and beverage, love of, architecture and design. But it's usually kind of that artistic side or that. And then they kind of get stuck being like, holy crap, I didn't know I got to make these recipe cards. And oh my God, my supplier invoices are a mess, and my bookkeeping and my inventory. And it's all these super tedious, but super important things. And so our thing is, can we help alleviate that? So on the time side, we take all the things that they have to do anyways, or they should be doing. If they're not doing it, they got a bigger problem, but that most restaurants today are doing. And we just say, can we make it faster? So we even joke around internally. We're like, look, inventory is never going to be fun. We just make it suck less and faster. So numbers on the inventory side, on the low end, we usually can cut it in half, but sometimes even 80%. So a recent client, as an example, was doing weekly inventory, 6 hours every single Sunday. Now it takes them an hour and a half every single Sunday. So it's like 4.5 hours
From
saved
6 hours
to
to
one and
an
a half.
hour and a man.
Yes. Yeah. And this is like from his mouth. I was like, I need a case study because I want you to say it. People won't believe me. So we even put a case study with him as one example. But generally, at least half. So a 6-hour inventory, at least cut to 3. But the other thing is, I always tell people, even if the time savings on just the counting wasn't amazing, let's say it's like, oh, it only saved me an hour, 2 hours. Usually it's more, but even the worst case, it connects to everything else. So it's not just that piece, but it's like that now helps with everything, every other part of the process. So inventory wise, 50% or more. Invoice data entry, it's like 80% time savings because you just have to snap a picture. We do the rest or upload it. The recipe costing, we actually do it for you as part of the onboarding. I think we're one of the few that do it, again, because our philosophy is time back. So part of our onboarding, we tell you, hey, Jason, send me, if you were the chef, send me your food recipes. If you're the bar manager, send me your cocktails. We're going to enter it for you just to the first time to get it off your plate. We'll probably get like 80% of the way. And then we're going to train you, and it's very easy and intuitive, so you can update it. We don't want to be the bottleneck, and tomorrow you want to change the recipe, you got to contact us. No, you can do it easily, but let us do that first bulk kind of onboarding. So everything we do is to stay on time. So inventory, the data entry on the invoicing side, we sync the GL codes to QuickBooks. So that's the bookkeeping side, the recipe costing. And then ultimately the reporting is a big one because sometimes people say, oh yeah, they downplay it. I'll give you, for example, a client might say, yeah, it's not bad. My inventory only takes 2 hours. And this will be my next question. How many people? Oh, we're 3. Okay, so 6 hours.
6 hours.
And then I say, okay, but 6 hours, but then what do you do? Everybody counts. What do you do? Oh, well, then I got to put it into like an Excel sheet. What does that take you? That's not bad. Only an hour. So it went from 2 hours. Now I realized, wait, it's 6 because there's 3 people. An extra hour to enter it. We're at 7. And that's not counting double checking any mistakes because now you're like, wait, this is
like finding lost chicken. Go find me 2 cases of chicken.
Exactly.
Go find me 12 bottles of Heineken.
You nailed it. Well, it quickly gets out of control. So sometimes I laugh when people downplay it. It's like, oh, it only takes me 2 hours. And then quickly you find, no, it's really 6, and that data entry. And then to your point, and you could tell you've done this before because that's exactly what happens. It's, wait, we're missing a case of this. Where is that? Let's double check. And then there's a couple more hours. So the big thing I always tell people is if you can't rely on the data, like, yes, it's good if you're doing something. It's better than doing nothing. But if you can't rely on the data, it kind of defeats the purpose, because then you're going to get your report, you're going to get your variance, you're going to get your actual versus theoretical. And then you're like, is this right? Or is it just like a miscount? So that's why it's really important you find a system that you can at least trust. If not, you're always going to be doubting the numbers.
Now, I wanted to go into, tech stack and
Yeah.
the who you integrate with, but I know that anyone listening or watching, they can go to your website and get a pretty general view
Yeah.
of how you integrate with certain platforms. So I actually want to move forward with something that they can't find online that's
Sure.
on your website. What are the biggest mistakes you see restaurants making with inventory, and how can they fix them?
Oof, that's a good one. Okay. Let me spitball here. Okay. One. Okay. I'm laughing because I'm like, so many mistakes, but there's a few that come to mind. Okay. One mistake I see, and it actually goes back to communication, but it's sometimes if the restaurant's a little bigger, if it's a small restaurant, usually the owner is the one that works there, and so it's fine. But the minute it's a multi-location or it's just a bigger org, I see a discrepancy between the people that are choosing the inventory software and the people that are using it. And so the mistake I see is not involving the people using it. Now, look, I'm not saying the people using it have to 100% green light it, and if they don't, we won't move forward. Look, you're the decision maker. You do what you got to do, but at least get them to somewhat vet it. So what I've seen the places that do it better do is that they will audit it and do a demo with Whisk and ask us questions. Okay, do you integrate with their POS and show me how this works? And can I do yields if I buy my fish? And I could, cool. Do your due diligence, ask all the million and one questions. But then I was okay, I'd like to have my kitchen manager come on, or I'd like to have my bar manager come on so they can ask questions. And when they come on and they see it, number one, now they're bought in. And number two, the chances of that working is so much greater, because the biggest mistake I see is ownership kind of just chooses a system because they get sold on the reports and they're like, yes, these are great reports. So they're not as worried about the input because they're not doing the input. And then the people using it are doing the input, and they're using a laptop, and it's basically a spreadsheet, and they're typing things in, and it's hard to do, and it's tedious. So it's like, they're not really happy, right? So because those two people care about different things, I think it's important to involve. So that would be one of the biggest, is like, actually get your team involved. The second one is take on a few demos. Don't just go with the first one you see. So I even encourage people. I say, listen, if you've only seen Whisk and you haven't seen someone else, I know it sounds contradictory a bit, but I'll tell them, book one or two demos, do a bit of research, Google it. I know you like what you see, but we find if people have other benchmarks, they'll actually appreciate Whisk more. So we encourage people to see what's out there so they have a benchmark. And then maybe a third one I would say that people do that I see happen often is they don't keep their areas organized. And if your areas are not organized, it doesn't have to be perfect, but like clean and organized, it just makes the counting worse. And I'll give you one quick anecdote. We had a client, this one comes to mind because it was like a big case, but their stockroom was a mess. And what would happen is that, it was mainly with the alcohol side, but like they'd get a shipment of cases of wine, this, whatever. And instead of putting it on the shelf or what, they'd open it up and take one out, and they'd stack boxes on top of each other. And so when it came down to counting, it was pain in the ass. Why? Because it's like you'd have cases stacked, but you have a doubt, and you'd be like, wait, maybe some of these are open. So you're taking them all down, and oh yeah, this one's open, and there's 2 bottles missing in here. So just by changing their mentality and saying, guys, let's make a rule. If you open a case, you put it on the shelf. If not, we know the case is full. All of a sudden, we got rid of so much like half cases, whatever. The shelves were super organized, and the counting time got cut in like half. So keeping things organized really will help the counting, which will also directly impact the accuracy because you're going to make less mistakes. So it's another one that I think is just, I know it sounds obvious, but like keeping things organized will make your life easier. So that's why sometimes once your staff starts counting, they end up having a more organized place. Because what I've noticed, there's a place for third parties. I'm not knocking them, but sometimes when people use third-party inventory counters, you'll notice that their areas are not as neat or organized because someone else, they don't care. Someone else is counting. They don't care.
Yep.
When they start counting, you start seeing that things are neat, things are clean, the bottles are, there's no fruit fly. Like things are just tighter because they're counting. So it's a nice little like bonus. But those are probably the top 3 things I see.
fruit flies. You have definitely been in quite a few bars. And yes, absolutely. Your stockroom should look like a Wegmans, a Kroger, whatever. I mean, it should be labels out the box, in a line, lined up, and everything that's in the back has not been opened yet
Exactly.
behind the
Mhm.
actual open bottles that are up front. Absolutely can't agree more. So you are deeply rooted into innovation. You are deeply rooted into technology. You are finding ways not only to be better than your competition, but also to just keep giving improvements
Yeah.
to the business owner and the user. What
Yes.
innovations or trends do you see shaping the future of inventory management in hospitality?
Great question. So the way we see it is we're always trying to improve each of these processes, but really the brain of Whisk is like the whole back end of just calculating, your inventory, your usage, your recipes, the point of sale integrations, the complications of within recipes and yields and like all that complex stuff is the core. Because sometimes people are like, yeah, but aren't you worried someone's going to come out with a AI camera that can just count inventory? And we're like, no, we're not worried. We love that because for us, that's just the input. And right now for us, on the food side, it's a scale. On the beverage side, it's a Bluetooth scale. We have a visual mode too. But we know that'll evolve. But that's just one piece of the pie. And so even if tomorrow someone came up with this awesome camera and you just point it and it knows through whatever, and it knows the level of alcohol or how much food you have, and there's been some stuff like that coming out, it's cool. But then the next question will be like, great, that helped me count, but I still need to connect to my POS. I still need my recipes. I still need, so that will never leave. I think it'll get more and more automated, but that'll never leave. So we've been seeing some evolution on that side. So like the camera stuff and trying to detect things automatically. So just pointing it and it's like detects. The truth is it's better for stock location. So I've seen it. I've met with a company, the name says to me that they were doing some pretty cool stuff with airlines. A little easier because, you pull out all those mini bottles of, I don't know, Grey Goose or Jack Daniels or whatever, and just camera can easily count it because they know the shape of the bottle. And obviously those are open. It's binary. It's open or not. It's not half bottle. So I see use cases like that are pretty interesting and the camera detects what was used and consumed. So I think that's interesting and I'll keep evolving. I think to go to a full-on bar where things are mixed and whatever, it's going to be hard because there's different levels, hard to see through. Stockrooms are not always the most organized. Same thing with the food. So, but I do see more and more automation happening around the backside, meaning like the recipes and helping figure out what to prep and highlighting should I order from supplier A or supplier B. So I do see more and more innovation happening on the back of house in general, which I think is good because it's the side that like most restaurateurs hate. So the more that could be automated and help them, I think the better. And then they can focus on the part of the business they actually like, which is more of the front of house generally. Generally, it depends on the person, but generally. So I do see more and more happening maybe on the back of house when it comes to the potential accounting side, the forecasting side. There's some cool tools out there that are helping with like predictive stuff. So based on sales data, based on weather, based on different trends, what should I prep? What should I order? How many guests should I expect? So I think that side of the business is pretty interesting and it's going to keep getting better. I don't think it's there yet, but I think it's getting better and better. And then it's just a matter of time, but it'll get there.
Well, I'm waiting on the camera one where instead of, looking at my scale in my bathroom and like not wanting to get on there because I'm like, damn it, no, I didn't lose any pounds. I can just walk in front of the mirror and it like looks at the shape of my bottle
Right.
and says
Right.
200 pounds. And I'll go, oh, damn it. And then being a bit more predictive, it then says, Jason, and if you eat that cheeseburger for dinner, it's going to be 202. And I'm like, okay, all right, well, at least now I know. Let me switch up what I'm going to eat because I've already walked. The camera got me and said 200. So yeah, that'll be great. That would be awesome. All right. So final question,
Oh,
whenever we are in our business, whenever we are in our business, we are getting it into leadership and we definitely want to take that next role. And And taking the next role means I want to sit at the table with leadership. I want to be invited to sit at the table with the cool kids, So at the leadership table, we believe in conversations that inspire, lead, and elevate. And whenever we do sit at those tables, we tend to have these conversations that help shift our mindset into being that next person, that next phase, that next chapter of who we are. What's one conversation in your career that profoundly shaped who you are as a leader?
Mm. One that comes to mind, like there's definitely a few over the last 10 years, but one that comes to mind, funny enough, was actually from our first investment. It was VC firm called Mantella. His name's Robin, and to this day he's actually like involved, and I chat with him, and he's been basically like a mentor, which has been nice. But I remember when he first invested, I kind of told him, I'm like, why'd you take the chance? I don't know much about, like, I know about the business and what I want to build, but like, I'm not really a CEO. I just started, kind of thing. And he says, the hardest challenge you're going to have, or where most founders, struggle, is as a startup, you're going to grow fast, and you might grow 2 times a year, 3 times a year, whatever it is, right? And the business is going to grow 2 times a year, 3 times a year, etc. Because the hard part is that means you got to grow 2 times a year. You got to grow 3 times a year. So he said, that's where you'll see the team will evolve. The people you hire today, and yourself included, but the people you hire today to go from $0 to your first 500,000 is not the same people you hire to go to 500,000 to 5 mil, and then 5 mil to 20 mil, whatever it is. But the analogy always stuck with me that it's like, man, I got to invest in myself and get mentorship and grow, because yes, Whisk is going to grow, but it means I need to grow as a person. I got to get better at hiring. I got to get better at public speaking. I got to get better at product, whatever it is, or better at sales. So that always stuck with me, that idea that like, shit, you got to invest in yourself, or else you might be that limiting factor in the growth of the company. Because like, how could the company keep growing if you're leading it and you stop growing? So that analogy always stuck with me. And for people listening, I think it's something really important. We always are thinking about how to invest in other people, which is important. Investing in my team and all that, 100% important. But don't forget to invest in yourself too, right? Like, there's a reason
That's
every
wise
athlete in
words.
the world, has a coach.
I mean, it's so spot on that, we think about the growth of our business and the growth of the net income year one versus year two and year over year. But when we think about just ourselves, what does that mean for us as well? And we all know it isn't looking at our own weakness and then saying, how can I make my weakness stronger? Yes, you have to get better. But like you said, we have to surround ourselves with a team to help us get from this next point to this next point, because these previous points and what we did back then isn't the same application for the next set of targets that we have to hit. That is spot on. Now, Angelo, before we wrap up, this has been amazing. Where can they connect with you and find out more about you and WISK.ai?
Yeah, super easy. So for people listening, our website pretty much has everything. So WISK.ai, WISK is WISK.ai. There'll be the link to the podcast, and the podcast, we have our own podcast as well called Whisking It All. So there's that. There's our blog. We try to write 1 or 2 blogs a week. We got case studies. We got video. So like, just pretty much everything's on the website. If you want to follow me a little more personally, I'm on LinkedIn. I'm pretty active, I would say. So just Angelo Esposito on LinkedIn. And then on the side, it's been about a year now. I've been kind of writing a weekly blog every Sunday. So not a lot of people know it. It's super low key, but it's a newsletter, and it's on a website as well. Just my full name, angeloesposito.com. And I just write things I've been learning as I've been growing Whisk. So it's a bit more on the business side. It's not necessarily just hospitality, but it's like my learnings as a CEO of how to hire better, mistakes I've made, the definition of done, how to delegate, how to buy back your time, tricks to manage your email that save me 10 hours a week. So just as I've been learning over the years, just things, just real failures, real learnings, I post that. So for business leaders that just want to learn or learn from my mistakes, angeloesposito.com. But for everything else, Angelo Esposito on LinkedIn, and then just WISK.ai, you'll pretty much find all our links.
We could use all of those topics, all those tips, and even on Sundays, right before we get back into Wonderful Monday. So
exactly.
For today, we explored how effective inventory management can transform hospitality businesses, save time, and improve profitability. Angelo, thank you for sharing your insights with us at the Leadership Tape and to our listeners. If you found value in today's conversation, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share this episode with a fellow leader. You can always visit jasonebrooks.com for more leadership insights and resources. Until next time, keep leading with impact, and remember, manage, lead, coach, repeat. We'll see you soon.
Thanks for having me, Jason.
Thank you.